Let me start by saying I am no fan of Donald Trump. So when I tell you in the following video that Trump's tariffs are not responsible for a lot of the inflation and high costs in Canada, it's not because I'm trying to defend Trump. In fact, Trump is an economic imbecile. In his State of the Union address this week, he said, "For decades, countries have been ripping us off, and now because of my tariffs, they're paying hundreds of billions of dollars to pay for programs." And foreign countries and foreign companies don't pay tariffs. Tariffs are on imports. They're paid by the companies that bring goods in, and they're paid by consumers. The people who have paid somewhere around $170 billion in the last year for Trump's tariffs are ordinary American consumers or small businesses that have had to eat the cost of the tariffs rather than raise their prices. So anybody who thinks tariffs are paid by the foreign countries and foreign companies is an economic imbecile. And that's where Trump is. So don't get me wrong. I am no fan of Donald Trump, nor his illegal tariffs that were struck down last week. But if you look at food inflation in Canada, for instance, very little of it has anything to do with Donald Trump. We have the highest food inflation in the G7. Since this time last year, food prices in Canada have risen about 7.5%. That's double the amount they've risen in the United States, and it's 50% above where European prices have gone. So how come we have such high prices? Well, for instance, we have a lot of overregulation. We have far too many cooks into the broth. We have supply management, for instance, that controls the price of dairy, eggs, chicken, and turkeys. Dairy's the big one. We even have cases where Canadian dairy producers have dumped milk rather than sell it at a discount because they're protecting the farmer, not the consumer. That adds more cost to Canadian food. Supply management adds more cost to Canadian food than anything Trump has done. Another thing that adds cost is we don't have as much competition in as the United States does, or as the bigger European countries do. For instance, Germany has nearly twice as many grocery store chains as we do. Now, Germany's twice the population of Canada, but that doesn't mean we'd have twice the number of grocery store chains by nature. What we have is a lot of property restrictions imposed by our grocery store chains on their landlords. The landlord comes and says, "Oh, I want to rent you this large piece in my mall, my strip mall, on my big box lot. I want to rent you this big chunk of land." And the grocery store chain says, "All right, we'll rent it. But in return, you have to sign an agreement that you will not allow another grocery store in any of your buildings within 3 or 4 kilometers of our store." Well, that cuts down the number of grocery stores there are competing for your dollars. And that means they can charge slightly higher, and you have to pay it because there is no other alternative. The other thing that happens with food inflation is that we don't have the number of large-scale farms. Now, I'm not sure we could invent those out of whole cloth, but it all comes down to overregulation in the Canadian market. And a very good example of how that hurts could be seen this week when the World Bank released its competitiveness rankings for the countries of the world. Canada is 33rd. We used to be 4th. We are 33rd now because we have so many environmental regulations. We have so many regulations on supply management, on and on and on. We're overregulated. The United States is 4th on this list, which means that we are now 28 places back of the United States. And you know who we're just ahead of? Do you know who's in 34th place? Communist China. That's where we're at in Canada on competitiveness. We are driving away investment. We are stifling competition. And the result is our prices are higher. And that has little or nothing to do with Donald J. Trump. For Post Media, I'm Lorne Gunter.